As an admirer and follower of love, I've always been curious about the way it's expressed, commemorated, and honored, not within just myself, but also in my interactions with others. How it flows through my being and touches other people, and how it's reflected back to me. I've been actively healing my trauma and creating from my entire holistic being for a couple years now, and I want to share the 4 biggest lessons I've learned that hopefully will help you attain a clear vision of who you are and ultimately feel more satisfaction living your day-to-day life. One of my favorite books, called The Wisdom of Insecurity, written by Alan Watts, talks about the absolute truth of life, which is change. Change is inevitable, and we have control over how we want to respond to that change. Whether it's resisting against it and holding on to the past with resentment, or embracing change and letting it flow through us and walking with it alongside us, and being present in every moment that we encounter. Change is the cornerstone of life and ultimately what brings us truer satisfaction. We can choose to allow change to teach us lessons and allow it to open up new versions of ourselves, to see opportunities where we can lean in and be of more service to others, be of a community, contribute the unique expressions and the facets of us that maybe didn't get a chance to shine their light before. In the same line, it's okay to hold on to things because sometimes life isn't moving at the pace that we naturally attune to because of constant competition that we see. And naturally, we compare ourselves and judge who is outside of us, and we don't attune into the natural sovereignty that is within us. Whenever there is a change in your life, it's important to accept it and unconditionally love yourself at the same time. But when you hold on to things for too long, you can feel yourself going past the expiration date, and this old nagging feeling, this old hurt creeps up back on you and latches onto you like some parasite that forces you to stay in your shell or stay in an old body that no longer serves you. When I've had issues holding on in the past, it came out and manifested as anxiety and control issues, neuroticism, because I felt like if I couldn't control the world, then how can I control myself, right? When everything seems so out of your hands and like you don't have a grasp on reality, whatever reality is, and there's so many changes and tumultuous events that escalates, and it's just very easy to spiral from that place. So it's important to recognize and pause, feel your body, and center on the things that you can control. Before I was introduced to movement, I felt so much tension that was lodged in my body that, excavated any joy I had in my sensuality, in who I am. We're in an era of society where pleasure is so commodified. I'm not really seeing a lot of conversations talking about how important it is to tune out what 90% of society is telling you to do. For example, dancing when you feel like it, singing because you can't help but express your voice, writing because there's this itch you need to scratch. All of these are ways of how we can approach changes in our life in a healthy and productive way, because there are all of these complicated balls of feelings that are so easily swayed and influenced by our external environment. I personally believe all of us are equipped naturally with traits that help us deal with change. But because of the fast pace of technology and the urge to always be better and to always do better, that can in fact subconsciously contradict our natural urge to just rest and to take a breath and really tune into what our body needs. And all you can do is let silence teach you something. Meditating throughout my years of healing has really taught me what it means to be in my body. I didn't meditate in isolation. At the same time, I was exploring new avenues and new social environments and new communities for me to play out some autonomous part of me that wanted to experiment. So if you're watching this, you know that you're ready and willing to change, and at the same time accept the changes within you. One of the biggest fears that compounds in all of us in society is the fear of death. What other reason is there to invent more health supplements and invest in the longevity of your health and invest in more beauty products and plastic surgery? I myself am no stranger to using moisturizer and sunscreen every day to protect my beauty. But moderation is everything when dealing with change. And you can only know yourself through doing your own research and taking sole responsibility for your life, how you can approach change and maneuver it in a way that feels healthy to you. It's okay to experiment with life, just to see what the cultural differences can teach you about your upbringing and what you can learn by experiencing novel things. When we look back on civilization and reflect on the history of industrialization, we can see that sometimes change was forced upon us way too soon. And that's why we are in a climate crisis. We can try and pretend and ignore a climate crisis, but in fact we all live in one planet together, and all of us are energetically connected in some way, from the most wealthy billionaire living in his mansion to the poorest civilian who is living day to day trying to survive from war. Between all of this, there is a common force, I personally believe, that drives us to do what we do. But that doesn't excuse the unethical acts caused by those who are too greedy, who are in power. So this brings me to my second lesson for myself personally, which is that love is the unconditional force that we can all access within us, and it is the motivator and driver for most of what we do. You gotta think about things in context, because it's important to have the correct frame of reference for where you are in the world. And the more that you ignore what you see, the more disillusioned you'll become with your own life. There is a balance to pleasure. All relationships are about compromise, especially the ones we have with our neighbors on the other side of the world. None of us live in complete isolation, as isolated as you feel or as desolate as it seems. All of us want safety, belonging, and connection with each other. And that voice, that intuitive voice, it really never goes away. Sometimes it's dumbed down to a whisper, but the less you listen to other people and really tune into your voice, and the more you seek out people who are like you, who see the world in a holistic context, the clearer you can hear your voice. When you're in school, people don't teach you how to connect with each other in an ethical and healthy way that also brings about compromises. As a result, we rely on teachers and parents to educate us on how to be a contributing or good member of society. But there are so many varied factors, and most of us did grow up with chronically emotionally unsafe people and environments, and the focus on money and fame and success is way out of balance with our natural tendency to want to play and be with each other and have and experience that natural give and take. If we truly lived in a world where there was no suffering at all and it was just good things happening all of the time, you wouldn't even feel anything. You would just feel a constant adrenaline rush that probably will shorten your lifespan, because you're just always happy, you're always satisfied, you're always pleasured. And that's why there are ups and downs and peaks and troughs, is because we need to experience suffering And we need to create problems for ourselves, frankly, in order to feel the satisfaction, because the whole point of living is to enjoy the process of going through these changes and learning what it means to love and feel disdain and learn and regret and lean into the encompassment of all of these emotions. It's funny, as humans, we have this very emotional side to us, which ultimately drives 90% of all of our decision making. And yet, we are such an intellectually, rationally focused world. We pride ourselves on the philosophical pursuits, on the scientific research, and amongst all of this, it can be hard to decipher what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Which brings me to my next point, my next lesson in healing, is the importance to have a moderately detached, thoughtfully neutral perspective of living in this world, especially when we encounter personally emotional situations that are meant to teach us lessons and test us and test our limits. I like to think of life as a game where there is no one winner or one loser, but it's a game that teaches you how to live and become your most authentic self. And that's how you win, is lean into your authenticity. That looks different for everyone. I'm not going to speak for other people. If we think of life as a game, it's important to have good sportsmanship. If you've watched any sports or seeing anyone engaging in a game, usually people who lose the game take it with grace and they are humble about it because they see this loss as another lesson to teach them something and to encourage them to learn and do better the next time. The best winners are also the ones who are not super boastful or very prideful about their accomplishments, but they keep their head down and they acknowledge that it was their skill and their experience. They also congratulate the ones who didn't win on playing with them, on helping make this a holistic experience that's fun and challenging and exciting and enjoyable. Applying this theory to how you live a life, you can change your mindset and your perspective in a way that makes it fun for you. So, for example, I am moving in a couple months and I have no idea how I'll pay my bills. But I'm really excited for all of the opportunities that's coming when I'm moving and all of the changes that I'll face. And I let go and release the fear of always wanting to control the outcome and always wanting to expect a certain thing to happen. Through this consistent practice of neutrality and detachment, I can see that I am merely a small role in this entire world. And even if I die tomorrow, I have no choice but to be okay with it because I was just one being. Whether reincarnation is real or not, I got to learn a lot of lessons in this lifetime and feel that I spiritually ascended in some way because I am more authentic and I have the freedom to make choices that are authentic to me. And for that, I can only be grateful and humble. Thoughtful detachment is something I've covered in a couple other videos as well, but it is ultimately about seeing yourself as this character in a video game. You have the infinitum of choices in front of you. Only you can decide what is best for you. That's why it's important to have preferences. At the same time, when things don't go the way you want to go, you gotta take it in stride and not be too resentful about it because changes happen. The only thing you really do have control over is your mindset and how mentally prepared you are for these changes. The more skills you learn in refining your voice, in sharpening your character, and allowing your wits and charisma and strategic thinking to come together and hone into who you are as a whole, the better and clearer it'll be for you to see how you want your future to be paved out. Take a drawing, for example, or a piece of music, or a book. We often start with an idea, a concept. Sometimes we don't even have one. Sometimes we just start messing around and playing around the keys, or just sketching out shapes, or writing down the latest phrases. It is from that seed that's planted that we start to carve out what it means to create a story. And we think about the emotions that we really want to bring out when we get to reflect back on this piece of art. And that's how I like to maneuver life, is you follow the feeling that you want to experience for most of your life, knowing that there will be failures, but you allow this feeling to guide you to make choices that feel right. There is a right way to live your life, but your right doesn't necessarily mean the same right way for someone else. So ultimately, this brings me to my fourth lesson, is my relationship with myself is a reflection of my relationship with other people, and vice versa. Anything that's happening in my career, my finances, my relationship, they're all a reflection of my relationship with myself. We have tens of thousands of thoughts every single day ruminating through our head. And it can be hard to stay in a neutral state knowing all of the stimulations that we are bombarded by. So the more time you spend reflecting on what really tickles your brain and makes it light up, and what really makes you feel small and tight, the easier you can discern what activities you want to lean into. Your assumptions about yourself and other people shapes your worldview and how you move through this world. If you believe that you live in a safe place, then you do. But you have to act like it, and you have to do the things that make it happen for you. You need to know that in order for things to flow easily throughout your life, only you get to love yourself unconditionally. No one else will. Perhaps they will one day. That would be ideal. But first, you need to love yourself unconditionally. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't get into a relationship or seek out a new adventure before you can completely love yourself. But take things with moderation and discernment. And know that when you love yourself unconditionally, you can make choices and decisions from a place that's empowering to you and honoring your deepest desires and your truest fulfillment, instead of seeking more thrill or seeking more external validation. Know that you are worthy of love because you are a miracle on this earth, and you are blessed with this life to experience all of the pleasures and sufferings. And you get to have the power to transmute your pain into pleasure. And once you know and really understand this, not just believe it, but really know it, you get to act like it when you move in this world, especially when you're tested in social environments and new environments that were created to see if that stays true in your heart. The more you treat yourself with compassion and unconditional loving, the easier it is to treat others with empathy and to not rage out on them or take your anger out on them. And the more good you can spread in this world. And when you take active responsibility for how you're showing up in this world and how you contribute to the lives of others, you can actually see why your worth is inherently there and why your value comes from you speaking out for yourself. Anytime you see someone who is insecure or begging for someone else's validation, you know that there is a deep trauma within themselves that only they have the responsibility to cure. I could sit here all day and tell you that no matter what happens, you'll always be loved, and that you're a miracle living on this earth, and that you're worthy of your deepest desires. But when you don't do the work to really heal that within yourself and know and embed that truth within yourself, you could listen to me a million times, but you won't really believe it, because it's not really about the belief, it's about knowing. And knowing is connected to a deeper faith in something that is intangible outside of what we see in this reality. Knowing means trusting your instincts and trusting your ability and your resourcefulness and the inherent wealth that exists within you to bring about your deepest satisfaction and not compare yourself constantly. And so, how do you move through this world in a way that's authentic for you? Well, remember and know that you are your biggest cheerleader. You have the privilege and you get to speak up for yourself. It's not about you have to, but you get to speak up for yourself. Language matters. In this world, in our human-driven, dominated world, humans are the only ones capable of this vast diversity of languages. Maybe even more than animals, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Prove me wrong if humans are limited in languages compared to other species. So it's important to speak up for yourself because you get the privilege to do so. This means that in a room of 100 people, when everyone is contradicting against you or trying to dominate or assert their authority over you, only you have the power to speak up and know yourself. This seems very daunting because how do you know you're right? How do you know you're not making a mistake? Well, you're not a blemish on this world. You're not a flaw. You're a complete human being who's deserving of love, belonging, and connection. And when things don't go your way, it's important to defend yourself. It's important to know that the way you relate to yourself is easily detectable by other people because everyone else has their intuitive sense as well. Some say, yeah, you should fake it until you make it. But that can be really hard on the brain, especially for those of us who are traumatized or who've had to navigate a really difficult transition from childhood to adolescent to adult life. And that's why I believe in the power of healing, especially not just your inner child, but healing constantly as an adult and reiterating through self-hypnosis and affirmations and movement and journaling. At the root of it all, it is about knowing that you are not just the creator of your life, but also the artist. You have the pen, you have the power to write your life, and if you want to be the main character, you gotta act like it, especially those of us who have access to a deeper truth in the universe. And by that, I mean you have a womb. And this doesn't mean you're a cis woman, but you know you have a womb. That power is so juicy and you can't neglect it. It is up to you to stand up for yourself in this male-dominated world. And men too. It's important to speak up with compassion and know that you have a right to be loved and that you don't need to be dominating about it because you can be assertive and gentle at the same time. You can be yourself and not try to exploit or exert control over other people. When you're in relation with other people, not just in romantic relationships, but platonic ones, in your career, in your everyday interaction, there are things that you can only learn in relation to one another that you can't learn in isolation. This means that when you feel the urge to be anxious or to control or want things to be a certain way, you gotta let go and compromise and let that resistance take you somewhere. Let that resistance show you where you need to heal within yourself so that you can show up the next time more true, because you're already a whole being. It's just you have pieces within you that need to be pieced back in the correct way and not just scattered puzzles in your soul that don't feel right or don't feel like they fit together. They do fit together. It's up to you to figure out how to piece them together in an effective and loving way. Knowing that change is inevitable, knowing that I do everything I do with love, that it's important to be ethical and think about things in a thoughtful and compromising way, as well as take my losses in stride. All of this helps put you in context with the world that you're living in. Stop trying to escape your current situation. This situation is teaching you about something. There will always be something in your life that you don't want to face, that's unhappy, that's insufferable, that's not helpful or healthy, and you get to choose whether you want to make the best out of the situation, whether you want to thrive in your limits, or let it whittle you down to something that you can't even recognize within yourself. I really hope this video helped you. This is something I am also learning in real time, and I like to make these videos for myself to remind me what is important to remember. Let me know what you thought. If you want to hear more, please like, subscribe, and comment. And I am so excited to see you next time. All my love to you, stars. Bye.